Hello and welcome to FPL Malbo. My name's Andy and today I'm going to be taking you through my alternate drafts for Game Week 1. If you've not seen my first draft video, then go and check that out first. I'll talk you through my teams and my kind of watch lists for each position as well. So go and check that out. I'll put a link in the description and then come back here and see what changes I would make to try and get some of the big hitters in there, such as Trent and Salah, and I'll also have a look at what I would do with a little formation change. If you enjoy this video, then please consider subscribing to the channel, give it a like, and I'd love to hear what you think of my alternate drafts in the comments. So to start us off, I'm going to have a little look at what I would do if I was putting a draft together with Trent Alexander-Arnold in it. So I put a little draft together and it looks like this. It actually has 3 changes to my current draft. Now Trent obviously comes in and I've put him in for sure. That could easily be Reece James, but as I said on my first draft video, it is kind of fitness dependent on James, but I just think his upside is so high that he could match Trent for points if he's fully fit to start the season. So yeah, shorter one has come out. Trent is a whole £2.5 million more, so I've had to make those savings. I actually had £1 million in the bank, and with my Trent draft, I've got 0 in the bank. I do like saving some money in the bank. It's not absolutely essential, obviously. Like, you can use the full 100 million, but I just think the amount of times you want to make a sideways move and you just get priced out of it. I actually started last season with Kane in instead of Haaland, and after game week 1, I decided to change. I was debating it all pre-season and then felt like I picked the wrong one immediately. And because I didn't make that transfer on the first day, I was immediately priced out of it. They started at the same price, but I'd left 0.5 in the bank so I could do that. And there's loads of kind of similarly priced players that I wouldn't want to leave myself priced out of if they start the season really well. So yeah, I prefer having money left in the bank, but it's not essential. So the way that I would make that money is Botman down to Bayer. Now, as you can see, Bayer's currently sitting on my bench, second on my bench. Any of the 4 millions that look likely to play, and I think there's a few of them look decent. Out of the promoted teams, I think Burnley's the one that I've got the most faith in their defence, and that's why Bayer's the one that I put in. The thing is, I would never... Botman is a rotation option for me. In fact, probably week 1, I'd consider starting him in front of James if I had both, with Chelsea playing Liverpool. But Bayer isn't that for me. Bayer will always be the absolute best first sub, and really it's only in emergencies that I'd use him. So I don't love it as a downgrade, but I don't hate Bayer as an option for sitting on the bench. And then the other one is Maddison to Mbeumo. Mbeumo I really like, actually, and putting him in has made me think whether I actually am convinced that Maddison is going to outscore him. Mbeumo would be my choice, I think. You've got the Brighton midfield as well at the same price point, and he's $1 million less than Maddison. I'm not entirely convinced that he's going to start up front in Tony's absence, but I will say his form last season when Tony was missing, like, he stepped up as that sort of talismanic figure, and he is on penalties. And I don't mind if he starts the season playing on the right of a front 3. Like, I don't think it makes a huge difference to him. So yeah, that's. I don't mind the changes at all in that one. I will say as well, like, the obvious place to downgrade to make that money would be Calvert-Lewin. I can't find any better options under 6 million. I think there's a small chance that Broja either gets game time at Chelsea or there's been some links to West Ham. If he goes there, then that's great. That's $1 million saved. I'm happy to have him on my bench instead. But there isn't any sort of cheap option that would get any sort of game time. And if I was to downgrade Calvert-Lewin, say, to a 4.5, I've got an extra 1.5 million to spend. Then I could, really look at Mbeumo could go back to Maddison. I'd still have money in the bank, sorry. But the problem is that my bench then looks so weak. It would have Bayer, who I don't really want to have to play ever, but at least would start regularly for Burnley, I expect. And then 2 non-playing £4.5 million strikers. You get one injury and you sort of have to make a change. You can't just bench somebody for a week because you just haven't got the bench to do it. Personally, I'm happy to have one non-playing player on the bench. And I'm happy to have another that is really cheap and will play and not get many points. But ideally, I want at least one option who's half decent and can, rotate into my team at points. And yeah, if I downgrade Calvert-Lewin, I can't do that. So that would be my current draft. Looking at it, I'll explain why I'm not convinced by Botman down to Bayer, even though Bayer's a decent option. Maddison down to Mbeumo, I really don't mind. It's given me a bit of food for thought because for $1 million less, I'm not convinced that that Maddison's going to outscore Mbeumo, or at least significantly. On Trent himself, the reason I haven't got him in there is that I'm not convinced he's so much more of a better option than the kind of £5.5 million defenders. Now, I think the sort of positional move that he had at the end of last season has been massively overplayed. I think it coincided with Liverpool being improved. Obviously, the system was a huge part of that. But they were still conceding goals. Trent was just getting forward kind of centrally more, rather than getting forward down the right wing. I think he's creative from either. Of course, he's a great option, but I'm not convinced that the Liverpool defence is fixed from last year. They conceded a lot of goals last year, and there's still that Fabinho might go, so they need a defensive midfielder. The players that they bought in that in midfield, yes, they might help with them kind of pressing from the front, but I think one thing with Trent pulling into midfield is that it leaves a huge amount of work for the kind of right centre-back to do, which was Konate. I actually think Jurriën Timber would have been a perfect buy for them to kind of cover that position, because I'm not sure it really plays to Konate's strengths. So can I see Trent getting goals and assists from midfield as he kind of pulls in there? Yeah, definitely. Can I see Liverpool keeping some clean sheets? Yeah. Are they going to keep significantly more clean sheets than a lot of the teams who have £5.5 million defenders? No, I don't think so. I don't think they'll keep more than City, for example. I think Botman at 4.5 will quite possibly get more clean sheets than Liverpool playing for Newcastle. So I'm really not sold on it. And I've seen some criticism of FPL's pricing, but I think the pricing has been really good this year. I think in putting some of the premiums high, it makes it really difficult to get them in and still have the absolute plethora of options that you've got just below that level, the kind of £7.5 to £10 million midfielders and strikers. So I like Trent's pricing because it makes me think about it, because if Trent was 6.5 million, then he's going straight in my team, really. But at 8, I'm not convinced he's going to significantly outscore some of those other options. So I don't like this draft as much as my current draft, because I'm not convinced that downgrading a couple of areas to get Trent in is worth it simply on Trent. But yeah, that's my Trent draft. It's not terrible. I certainly don't mind it, but it's not my favourite at the moment. So the next draft that I've got is a 3-5-2 draft, and I've made a couple of changes. Shaw has gone and Bayer has come in, and then I've got rid of Calvert-Lewin and I've brought in Ollie Watkins. So again, Shaw's the one who's made way. It might not be Shaw, but it's the most likely candidate at the moment. when I said I didn't like Bayer when he was kind of my better rotation option off the bench, I really like him as the kind of second sub, I guess, because I think he'll play, and I don't think he's I don't think he's likely to get a lot of points for me, but I don't see that as a huge problem because he's only going to come into the team in emergencies, and he's only 4 million, so he's the cheapest option in the game currently. And the money that would give me is enough to get Ollie Watkins in front of Calvert-Lewin. I wasn't looking at this originally because I wasn't sold on Ollie Watkins as a pick. I think for 8 million, the problem with him is that he's not explosive, so he rarely gets kind of, big double-digit hauls. But what he was last season is really consistent. I really like the signings that Villa have made. I don't love their fixtures, but they're not terrible. Ollie Watkins is on penalties. There isn't a huge amount of competition for his spot, so he's pretty nailed. The more I look at him, the more I'm talking myself into it. That said, if Nkunku plays really well for Chelsea pre-season, I am tempted by him as well. He's 0.5 million cheaper. I've actually got 0.5 million in the bank anyway with this draft, so it'll give me a whole million that I could look to upgrade people. And it means that I don't have to have a £6 million rotation option sitting on the bench. The reason I kind of went with that in the first place is because I wasn't sure I liked any of the strikers, but if I can talk myself into one, and Ollie Watkins and Nkunku, I think, are two that I could look at, then I take a lot of money off my bench, which I can invest in the first team. And I think it looks stronger on paper. I prefer it as a formation, I think. So I'm really, in making this draft, I'm really talking myself into this. The other thing is, in making my Trent draft, I was kind of happy to have Mbeumo in there instead of Maddison. I should say as well, like, I've had Foden in every single draft pretty much that I've done. It was kind of on the basis that I didn't think Kevin De Bruyne was going to be fit to start the season. From Pep's press conference in their pre-season friendlies, it sounds like he probably will. So I don't know. Maybe that will change my thinking about Foden. But at the moment, if I was looking at downgrading Maddison to Mbeumo, then I would have 1.5 million in the bank and be very happy with my team. I think it's at that point where I could genuinely consider things like potentially changing my goalkeeper up to 5 million, which I pretty much never do. But if I can't find anywhere else to invest that, then yeah, that's an option. And also, I've been umming and ahhing about kind of Shaw and things like that. Well, I could cover the United defence by getting a Nana in, or I could get rid of Gabriel and put Shaw in, and then have Ramsdale in goal. So I like the kind of flexibility with this draft as well. I still think the midfield looks really strong. In taking money off my bench to put it into my first team, I think the team looks at least as strong, if not stronger. I don't think the bench looks any weaker, really. And Calvert-Lewin at some point might be a good option this season. He's definitely underpriced, and deservedly so, because he's been injured for 18 months. But yeah, that's what I would do with a kind of 3-5-2 draft. And I gotta say, now I've put it together, I'm really convinced by it. So next up, I've got my draft with Salah. Similar to Trent, Salah's just been such a consistent asset. Even last year, which was a weaker year by his standards, he's still one of the highest scoring midfielders. He's still the best option in that Liverpool team. And to get him in, I've had to make sacrifices all over the place. The reason I'm not really considering this as a draft is that I don't think I'm going to captain Salah, and really the only point in owning a premium is that they're justifiable because you captain them. So most of the downgrades, in fact, all the downgrades have come in the midfield, aside from Shaw down to Bayer again. The problem is that I would be playing a 4-5-1 formation again, which means Botman would have to start every week pretty much. The only other option is to play Calvert-Lewin, which again might be an option, but we'd have to see on fitness on that. Similarly to the Trent draft, I could downgrade Calvert-Lewin, but realistically, I can't find anyone to do that. So I'm not prepared to. I just wouldn't go into a season with 2 non-playing players on my bench and 1 player who is at best likely to get you a 2-pointer. It's too weak for me. I like leaving a little bit on my bench, so not going to happen. So in midfield, I'd have to make some serious downgrades. No, I don't actually hate them. So Salah's coming for Martinelli. I think Salah will outscore Martinelli, but I'm not convinced that the kind of £4.5 million difference between them is, he's not going to outscore him by a third, I don't think, and that's the kind of money that you're talking. And Saka and Rashford are absolutely locked in my teams, really. So it's Foden and Maddison who I've had to make way. I don't mind Mitoma and I don't mind Mbeumo at all. I think they're both really strong options. I think they're both nailed. They'll start the season. Brighton have got loads of attacking options, but I think Mitoma played so well, particularly, after the World Cup, that he's going to start the season as first choice. So they're strong, but I think Foden has the potential to be really explosive start of the year, and that's why I want him. And Mbeumo and Mitoma don't really have that. And yeah, I think my bench is my defense is weakened by having Bayer, obviously, because Botman I think is underpriced. I think he should be 5 million, but he shouldn't really be any more than that because he's not got any sort of attacking returns, which Shaw has, and he's unlikely to pick up bonus points. Really, you've got a nailed on defender from one of the best defenses in the league, at least from last season. So I don't hate it at all, but I don't understand why you would justify it unless you're looking at captain and Salah. And I kind of went through the fixtures, and really there was 2 game weeks in the first 8 weeks that I would captain Salah entirely based off fixtures. And if Haaland starts the season how he started last year, then regardless of fixtures, I would captain him anyway. So yeah, it was an interesting draft to do, and it actually looked stronger than I thought it would. But it's not convinced me that it's a good option. I think, like I say, it's definitely right for some people because they will captain Salah over Haaland at different points in the first sort of 6-8 kind of game weeks. I don't see myself as that person. So the Salah draft looks decent on paper, but not for me. And finally, and just for fun, really, I've got a Trent and a Salah draft. So Bayer stays in there, Shaw is gone, and Reece James has had to go really on price, if for no other reason. I've still managed to bring in Mbeumo, but Mitoma's gone down to Enciso. I think if Enciso is nailed, I think he's probably the best option in that Brighton team for his price. I don't think he will because I have a feeling that João Pedro's going to be playing that 10 role and Ferguson and Welbeck will still rotate. Oh, and Undev as well through that kind of striking role. But if Enciso is nailed, I think his attacking output's as good as anyone in the Brighton team. But he's young and I have a feeling that he might get kind of eased in a little bit more rather than thrown in as a first choice. And then I've had to downgrade Calvert-Lewin as well, and that means that my bench consists of 2 non-playing players and somebody who has the potential of a 2-pointer. The first team looks okay, but I mean, particularly when you've got a few rotation risks in there, and Enciso in particular could easily not play a game, and then suddenly you're relying on Bayer coming off the bench as the only option really to get your points. And anyone else suddenly misses a game, picks up a little knock, on the day or day before, and you're screwed. So yeah, it's too high risk, and I don't think I'm confident enough about Liverpool that I think the rewards are worth it. So yeah, fun little draft to do, but nowhere near the consideration. So that's it for my alternate draft video. I might do this again, maybe show a Kane draft or a kind of 3-4-3 draft, but I think the likelihood is I'll probably wait until a few more transfers have gone through, a little bit more pre-season, and then I'll update my current draft. Certainly the 3-5-2 has given me a little food for thought. But if you enjoyed that video, then please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comment what you think of any of the drafts that I've done. And I'll leave it there for now. So thanks for watching. I'll see you on another video.